Okay, I put together the tubes, the growing tubes of this system a couple of months ago and have been running it successfully by hand since then, partly as a demonstration, partly because I hadn't figured out exactly how to put together the circulating system, but now I have overcome that particular issue. This 5-gallon bucket is the reservoir for the system. Inside the bucket there's a 180 gallon per hour EcoPlus pump. I wrapped a piece of 30% shade cloth around it to provide some additional filtration. The feed hose from the pump is a 1/2 inch inside diameter plastic hose. I put this valve in there thinking I might need to restrict the flow, but that turned out not to be the case, so this is basically a waste of effort. The nutrient solution feeds into the delivery end of the tubes using this kind of messy conglomeration of 1/2 inch tubes, but they do the job. Inside the 1/2 inch tube I put a piece of 3/8 ID tube and then put a piece of 3/8 dowel with a 3/16 hole drilled in it to make kind of a flow restriction. Okay, so there I think you can see hopefully see the water coming out. So I was noticing that this outside tube here wasn't getting enough fluid, so that's why I put in the flow restriction. Works well enough. And if you look around, you will see that people often have valves on each one of these inlets in order to control the flow and even that out. Of course, those valves cost money, so this works well enough. And at the outlet end, you can see the water flowing out at a nice rate of speed. Actually, the one in the back is not getting as much water now. Not sure what I'm going to do about that, if anything. These are pieces of 3/8 ID hose. You may recall from previous videos that when I built this originally, I drilled these 1/2 inch holes thinking that I would put 1/2 inch elbows in there, but it turned out they didn't hold water. But this 3/8 inch hose, ID hose, makes a very tight fit into these holes, and I'm actually not seeing any leakage from any parts of this system, which is what you want to achieve. So the fluid I'm using in there is mixed up to about EC 1.3 and then pH balanced to get it down to around 6. I've heard some things about pH changing in reservoirs. I'll have to monitor this to see if it's the case. So the other thing to mention about this is that I'm running it for about 5 minutes every 3 hours. I'll see if that's enough to keep the level up. But this is basically a Kratky system, and these things can probably go a day or more if necessary without having additional nutrient added because of the reservoir in the system, which also provides a very consistent availability of water, while at the same time the circulation that I am doing increases the oxygen in the water. So while I'm out here, these are some basically Kratky setups. There's some collards and some Greek basil, some pepper plants and a tomato plant. There's some chard, and there's some more basil in a 2-gallon bucket. So these are doing quite well. At one of my installations, I had a mishap last week where a basil plant died, and when you pulled it out of the solution, all the roots were dead. But they call that root rot, but I think what really happens there is that if you get the roots all the way in the water, then the plant drowns and it dies. Whereas if you allow roots to be above water, you will continue to have nice white roots and the plants will continue to grow.